Well, thanks for coming by, viewers. Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist. There's some stuff there that you can look at. We're doing malignant, covert theological abuse. Not a subject I don't think many of you would have heard of this subject before, would you? Malignant, covert theological abuse. You could even say it's malignant psychopathical covert theological abuse. These people are psychopaths. They're malignant. They won't change. They're not going to change. They will never ever change. These people will take their theological abuse to the grave, and you with them if they can. That's how malignant this is. Now, we left in our last session, I think it was session number 4, malignant covert theological abuse, talking about he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it and is not a forgetful hearer but a doer of the work. This is where it gets abusive. This one will be blessed in what he does. The perfect law of liberty we're going to look at, but let's just dissect this a bit. He who looks into the perfect law of liberty. Now, that's a massive passage because not many people realize what that means. It's not the Mosaic law, and I'm going to show you something very, very complicated in a second. I've only got a short amount of time to do this in 10 minutes. I like to keep these talks to 10 minutes. And continues in it. Now, if you were with us on the 1 and 2, it says in Galatians that if you want to keep the law, you've got to keep it all the time, and that's impossible. So this is not a law that's going to bring salvation. It's only going to bring you blessing. Okay, the things that you do or not do to make God happy or stop him from being sad don't save you. They just bless you. You've got to understand that. There's nothing you can do except have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. There's nothing else you can do except have faith in him. If you think there is, then you might be very careful that you're not practicing theological abuse. Now, in John chapter 1 verse 2, John, excuse me, viewers, let me be correct, stand corrected. 1 John chapter 2 verse 3. Now listen, by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. Now I'm going to ask you experts that are watching this, what are his commandments? What is the great commandment that Jesus is talking about? Well, it's not the Mosaic law, is it? We know that. Do you know what it is? Does anybody know what? Maybe you could comment. Jesus talks here. As the Father loved me, I also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. Now, what are these commandments? Now, Jesus hadn't died on the cross yet. So let's be very careful how we interpret this. And remember, Westerners had nothing to do with the Israeli law, the Mosaic law. It was specifically and exclusively, primarily for the Israelis. And you will abide in my love if you keep his commandments, just as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So Jesus is making a distinction between his commandments and his Father's commandments. Now, Christ did fulfill the law that the Jews couldn't keep. And he said, I've kept my Father's commandments as distinct from his commandments, which have come after the Father's commandments. These are new commandments, and abide in his love. You cannot have in your mind, when Jesus says, if you keep my commandments, the Mosaic law. But you can hear the Father's commandments were very clear, written on tablets of stone and given to Moses by an angel. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment. Now he's gone from a plurality of commandments to an exclusive single commandment. right? This is it. This is the big commandment, that if you love one another as I have loved you, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down his life for one's friends, right? Etc. And the new commandment, which we need to find, is, let me just sort this out. I think it's in 4. I think it's in, let's just have a look. Bear with me. 13. It's in 13. So prior to what he is saying here, we know that he has told them of this commandment. A new commandment I give you. This is the commandment, right? Forget about the Mosaic law. Forget about all this other stuff. This is it, right? This is Christ's new commandment, which is exclusive and separate to the Father's commandments, which he fulfilled. He's saying, just leave those alone. This is the new commandment. This is the law of liberty. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. Now, there's a lot in that, but let's just make that's it, the new commandment. That's it. So if we keep this commandment, let's go back to 1 John 2:3. By this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. There it is, right? Love one another as I have loved you, which we can't do. We can't do that. Nobody can love the way Christ loved. So you must love one another. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments, I don't know why they're plural, why that's plural, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. So we know we can't keep the Mosaic law. That's impossible. We know that we're not under the Mosaic law, and neither are the Jews, since Christ died on the cross. He says, but whoever keeps his word, there's the word, truly the love of God is perfected in him, or mature in him, because the perfection is Christ in us. By this we know that we are in him, by loving one another as he loved us. He who says he abides in him ought also himself to walk just as Christ walked. Brethren, I write no new commandment to you. Right now he's gone back to commandment singular. And remember, by this time Christ had been crucified for quite some time. But by this time it's an old commandment. Now that would make you think back. Old commandment. What comes to mind? Well, it's not the Mosaic law. Be very careful. It is not the Mosaic law, which you have had from the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of the new covenant. The beginning when Christ died on the cross. The old commandment is the word which you heard from the beginning. The beginning of the Christian New Testament. Again, a new commandment I write to you, which was the old commandment which you heard from the beginning, which thing is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. Now, what is the new commandment? That's by this time was the old commandment, that you love one another as Christ loved you. That's it. That's the commandment. And if we want to push it a bit, we can go I lost it. Won't muck around with it. But the point of what I'm saying is, the new commandment, the old commandment, by the time John wrote that epistle, was Christ crucified, was that we are to love It was the commandment that stood with Christ, that we're to love one another as he loved us. That was the new commandment. And that's all these other laws and rules and things for righteousness, they don't count. They don't count it for anything. And that's it. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If we go back to James, to the royal law of liberty, we might have to do another one on this again. James chapter 1, back to the royal law of liberty. Whoops. There it is. The perfect law of liberty was to love each other as Christ loved us. Thanks for coming in, and bye for now.